Hi friends. I want you to do something for me right now. Just for a second. Close your eyes. No, really. Close them. And I want you to think about the last time you worked really hard on something. Maybe it was a project. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a dream you had been quietly building in the corners of your life, piece by piece, night after night, while everyone else was asleep. You gave it everything. You poured your heart into it. You sacrificed weekends, you skipped sleep, you said no to things you wanted to do because you were committed. You believed, you showed up, you did the work. Then, nothing. No recognition, no applause, no thank you, no I see you, no good job, nothing, just silence. And in that silence, a voice, a very small, very dangerous voice, started to whisper, maybe you don't matter. Maybe what you do doesn't matter. Maybe you are not as good as you thought you were. Maybe nobody cares. You can open your eyes now, because I want to look at you when I say this. I want you to hear this from someone who has stood exactly where you are standing right now. In that quiet, invisible, crushing place, you are not alone. And what you are feeling, that hollow ache in your chest, that quiet anger, that exhausted sadness, it is not weakness, it is not failure. It is the feeling of a human being who is giving more than they are receiving. It is the feeling of a soul that is full of value, surrounded by people who are too blind, too busy, or too broken to see it. And today, right here, right now, we are going to talk about that. All of it. The real stuff. The stuff nobody puts in Instagram captions. The stuff that happens at 2 in the morning when the room is dark and the doubt is loud. We are going to walk through it together. And by the time we are done, I promise you, you will never look at yourself the same way again. Let me tell you about a woman named Sarah. Sarah grew up in a small town in the Midwest of America. Not rich, not poor, just ordinary. Her father worked at a factory. Her mother cleaned houses on weekends to help pay for groceries. Sarah was the kind of kid who noticed everything. She noticed when her mother was tired and would quietly start washing the dishes without being asked. She noticed when a classmate was sitting alone at lunch and would go sit with them. She was the kid who remembered birthdays, who wrote little notes of encouragement and slipped them into people's lockers. She was, in the truest sense of the word, a giver. She grew up, went to college on a partial scholarship, worked 2 jobs to cover the rest, graduated, got a job at a mid-sized company in marketing, and for 7 years, Sarah showed up early and stayed late. She mentored younger employees. She came up with the ideas that got used in campaigns. She solved problems before anyone else even noticed there was a problem. She was the engine. She was the glue. She was the person every team needs but rarely celebrates. And then one day, the company announced a new senior manager position. And Sarah, after 7 years of bleeding and breathing for that company, did not even get an interview. The job went to a man who had been there for 2 years, who Sarah had actually trained. She sat in her car that evening in the company parking lot and she cried. Not the pretty kind of crying you see in movies, the ugly kind. The kind that comes from somewhere deep, from a place that says, I gave everything I had and it still wasn't enough. I was invisible. I was invisible. I was replaceable. I was not. Now, I am not telling you this story because it has a neat, happy ending where Sarah sues the company and wins $1 million. I am telling you this story because what happened next is something that changed her life, and it started with one question. Sitting in that parking lot, tears on her face, she asked herself, whose validation have I been working for? Read that again. Whose validation have I been working for? Because here is the thing that nobody... Unequivocally, unconditionally, irrevocably, yes. But knowing that answer is not enough, because the world will test it. Every single day, the world will test it. People will ignore you. People will overlook you. People will take your kindness and mistake it for weakness. People will take your consistency and mistake it for obligation. People will take your love and forget to say thank you. And if your sense of worth is not anchored to something that cannot be moved, something inside you, something that belongs only to you, then every one of those moments will knock you off your feet. So how do we build that anchor? Let me tell you about a man named Thomas Edison. Now I know you have heard of Edison. The light bulb, the phonograph, yes, all of that. But I want to tell you a story about Edison that does not get told enough. When Edison was a boy, he came home from school one day with a note from his teacher. He gave it to his mother. And his mother read it. and her eyes filled with tears. Thomas asked his mother, "What does it say?" And his mother looked at him and said, "It says that your son is a genius. This school is too small for him and doesn't have good enough teachers for him. Please teach him yourself." Years later, after his mother had died, Edison was going through her old belongings and he found that note. He unfolded it and he read what it actually said. "Your son is addled. He is mentally deficient. We cannot have him in our school any longer. You must take him away." Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors in human history, sat down and cried like a child. And then he wrote in his journal, "Thomas Alva Edison was an adult child who, by a hero mother, became the genius of the century. His mother had lied to protect him. But what she had actually done was something far more powerful. She had given him a version of himself that was rooted in unconditional belief. She had refused to let someone else's assessment of her child become his identity. She had looked at the note that said, 'Not enough,' and said, 'No.' And said, 'No. Not in my house, not with my child, not on my watch.' Not all of us were lucky enough to have that mother. Not all of us had someone in our corner who looked at us when the world said, 'Not enough,' and whispered back, 'But I see everything in you.' Some of us were the ones who got the real note. Some of us heard the real verdict out loud. Not enough, not smart enough, not talented enough, not valuable enough. And if that is you, if you grew up in a house where love was conditional, where approval was withheld, where you learned to make yourself small so others could feel comfortable, then today, right now, I am going to do what Edison's mother did for him. I am going to be that voice. I am going to tell you what you should have been told a long time ago. You are enough. You have always been enough. Everything that was done to make you doubt, that was a lie. A lie told by people who were themselves broken, themselves afraid, themselves carrying their own invisible backpacks of not enough. Their inability to see your value was never a reflection of your worth, it was a reflection of their worth. Now let us talk about the workplace, because I know so many of you are carrying this weight professionally. And it is a specific grinding kind of pain. The pain of professional invisibility. You show up every day. You do excellent work. You solve problems. You contribute ideas. Sure, problems. You go above and beyond the job description because you actually care about what you do, because you believe in the work. And meanwhile, someone who talks louder than you, someone who plays politics better than you, someone who networks and schmoozes and performs their competence rather than actually demonstrating it, that person gets the promotion, gets the praise, gets the recognition. And you sit there and you think, am I doing something wrong? Am I in the wrong place? Am I not good enough? Let me tell you something about the workplace. Most workplaces are not designed to recognize the best work. They are designed to recognize the most visible work. Loud is not always good. Political is not always right. Recognized is not always deserved. And here is what that means. The absence of recognition from an organization does not tell you anything about the quality of a contribution. It tells you something about the quality of the organization. But, and this is crucial, you cannot use that truth as a reason to stop caring. Because some people, when they realize they are not being valued in their workplace, they do something that ultimately harms themselves. They think, fine, if they don't appreciate me, I won't give them my best anymore. They start coasting. They start doing the minimum. They start performing bitterness. And what happens? They actually do become less valuable. Not because they were never talented, but because they allowed someone else's blindness to blind them too. Do not do that. Do not let their inability to see you make you unable to see yourself. There is a concept I want to introduce to you. It is called the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when you work hard because you want someone else's approval. Intrinsic motivation is when you work hard because the work itself, the standard you hold yourself to, the person you are becoming through the doing, is reason enough. The most extraordinary human beings in history were almost all intrinsically motivated, not because nobody ever doubted them. In fact, the opposite. They were doubted by everyone. They were underestimated, dismissed, rejected, and laughed at. But they had built something inside themselves that external opinion could not reach. They had what I call an internal compass, a sense of direction that did not require anyone else's validation to remain true north. Vincent van Gogh sold exactly one painting in his lifetime. One, he lived in poverty. He was mocked. He was treated as a failure, as a madman, and he kept painting. Not because the world appreciated him, but because he could not paint. Because something inside him said, "This is what I am here to do. This is who I am. And I will not betray that no matter what the world says." Today, his paintings sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. The world caught up to Van Gogh. The world always catches up eventually, but it catches up to people who refuse to stop being themselves while they were waiting. I want to tell you about a moment in my own life. A moment of deep, quiet humiliation that I have not always been comfortable talking about. Years ago, I was part of a team working on a project that I had poured my soul into. I had come up with the core concept. I had done the research. I had worked through nights and weekends. I had solved problems that nobody else even saw coming. And when the project succeeded, when it was celebrated, when there were accolades and attention, not once, not a single time was my contribution acknowledged. Not in the presentation, not in the report, not in the meeting where everyone was praised. It was as if I had not been there at all. I remember sitting in that meeting, listening to names being called out, waiting for mine. And then the list ended, and my name was not on it. And I had to sit there, in that room full of people, wearing what I hoped was a neutral expression, while inside I was disintegrating. I drove home that night, and I sat in my driveway for 45 minutes. I could not go inside. I did not want my family to see me like that. I just sat there, in the dark, and I felt something that I can only describe as a kind of grief. Not grief for a person, but grief for a version of myself that believed that effort would be seen, that doing right would be recognized, that being good would be enough. And in that driveway, in that dark, I had to make a choice. Not a grand, dramatic choice, but the hardest kind, the quiet kind. I had to decide, was I going to let this moment define me? Was I going to let other people's blindness become my blindness? Was I going to shrink, or was I going to dig deeper? I chose to dig deeper, not because it was easy. It was not easy. It was humiliating, and it was painful. And there were weeks after that where the anger was real and the discouragement was real. But I kept coming back to one question: who am I doing this for? And when I was honest with myself, truly, completely honest, I realized that somewhere along the way, I had drifted. I had started doing the work for the recognition, not because of the calling. And that drift was not just their failure, it was mine too. Because when you start working for applause, you give the audience veto power over your soul. When you start doing good things, in order to be seen, you outsource your identity to other people's perception. And that is a terrifying, unstable place to live. I want to talk about relationships now. Because this wound of feeling unvalued, does not just live in offices. It lives in kitchens. It lives in bedrooms. It lives in the spaces between people who love each other but have stopped showing it. How many of you are in a relationship right now? A marriage, a partnership, a friendship, where you feel like you are the one who cares more, the one who reaches out more, the one who reaches out more, the one who remembers the little things, who plans, who initiates, who checks in, who tries. And the other person, they are not cruel, they are not deliberately unkind, they just don't notice. They take you for granted the way you take your heartbeat for granted. They assume you will always be there, so they stop making the effort to appreciate what it means that you are. That is a very specific kind of loneliness. It might be the loneliest kind there is. Being lonely inside a relationship, being surrounded and still invisible. And what happens to people in that place? One of two things. Either they shut down, they stop trying, they build a wall around the tender part of themselves to protect it. They become colder and more distant. They start performing the relationship rather than living it, or they try harder. They overcompensate. They become more giving, more accommodating, more self-erasing, hoping that if they just give enough, the other person will finally see them, will finally say, "I see how much you do. I see how much you love me. I see you." Both of those responses are understandable. Neither of them is the answer. The first one kills the relationship slowly. The second one kills you slowly. The answer, the painful, necessary, liberating answer, starts with a conversation. Not the conversation you have with your partner or your friend. The conversation you have with yourself first. The one that asks, why am I afraid to ask for what I need? Why does it feel dangerous to say out loud, I need you to appreciate me? I need to feel valued in this relationship? Why do I work so hard to earn something that should not have to be earned? And sometimes that conversation leads to a deeper, harder truth. Sometimes the person you are with is not capable of giving you what you need. Not because they don't love you, but because they have their own damage, their own walls, their own untreated wounds that make them unable to fully see the people right in front of them. And you cannot fix that. You cannot love someone into wholeness if they are not willing to do the work. You cannot pour enough of yourself into someone to fill a hole that belongs to them. There comes a moment in every life where you have to make a decision about what you are willing to live without. And I am not going to tell you what that decision should be. That is yours to make. That is yours to make. But I am going to tell you this. You deserve to be in rooms, relationships, families, and workplaces that see you. Not perfectly. No human being is perfect. No relationship is perfect. But fundamentally, genuinely, consistently, you deserve to be in spaces where your presence is not taken for granted, where your efforts are noticed, where the real you, not the performing, people-pleasing, shrinking version of you, is welcomed and valued. You deserve that. Not as an aspiration. As a minimum, let me tell you about water. Water, when it flows freely, carves canyons. The Grand Canyon, one of the most magnificent formations on the face of this earth, was carved not by violence, not by explosion, but by water. Patient, persistent, unstoppable water. It did not ask the rock for permission. It did not wait for the rock to applaud it. It did not stop flowing because the canyon was not there yet. It just kept moving, kept going, kept being what it was. And over millions of years, the rock had to yield. Not because the water was harder. Rock is harder than water. But because the water was more consistent. Because the water never stopped. You are water. The people who have not valued you, they are rock. They are hard and they are dense and they may not yield quickly or easily. But you, if you keep being who you are, if you keep flowing, if you refuse to dry up or be diverted by their indifference, you will carve something extraordinary. Not to prove them wrong, not to get revenge, not even to make them finally see you. But because flowing is what water does. Because becoming is what you do. Because your journey is not about them. It never was, Dot. I want to talk about silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable silence. Not the silence of being overlooked. Sacred silence. The silence inside you that knows the truth even when the world is lying. You have that silence. I know you do. I have felt it in my own life. Those moments when the external noise is so loud, so discouraging, so heavy, and somewhere deep inside, there is a voice. Quiet, but steady, unafraid. And it says, I know who I am. I know what I'm worth. I know what I'm capable of. And I am not done yet. That voice is the truest thing about you. Not your job title, not your salary, not your social media following, not the opinion of the person who looked through you at the meeting, not the absence of applause. That quiet, steady, unshakable inner voice, that is you, the real you. And your entire life's work, in one sense, is to learn to trust that voice more than any other. Now I want to talk about comparison. Because if you have ever felt unvalued, comparison is almost certainly part of the wound. You look at someone else, someone who seems to be getting all the recognition you are not getting, and you think, why them and not me? What do they have that I don't? Am I less than? Am I falling behind? Social media has turned this ancient human tendency into a weapon of mass self-destruction. You scroll through the highlight reel of everyone else's life and you compare it to the behind-the-scenes footage of your own. You see their promotions and their praise and their perfect moments, and you see your own struggles and failures and invisible days, and you feel the math working against you. But here is what you are not seeing. You are not seeing the nights they cried. You are not seeing the version they deleted before they posted the confident one. You are not seeing the relationship that looks perfect from the outside and is crumbling from the inside. You are not seeing the award they won that cost them the thing they actually cared about. You are not seeing the private grief behind the public smile. Everybody is carrying something. Everybody is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And the person whose life looks most enviable from the outside is often the person working hardest to hide how lost they feel on the inside. Comparison is the thief of joy. You have probably heard that. But let me add something to it. Comparison is not just the thief of joy, it is the thief of identity. Because every moment you spend measuring yourself against someone else is a moment stolen from the project of becoming yourself. And you are the only you there will ever be. There is no competition for that. There is no comparison possible. You are a completely original expression of human possibility, and the universe has never made one like you before and never will again. What would it look like if you actually believed that? Not as a motivational poster, not as a thing you say to yourself in the mirror, but as a deep lived cellular truth. What would you stop doing? What would you start doing? How differently would you walk into a room? How much less would other people's opinions weigh? Let me tell you about Oprah Winfrey, because Oprah's story is not just an inspiring story. It is a masterclass in refusing to be defined by other people's valuation of you. Oprah was born in rural Mississippi into poverty and trauma that most of us cannot imagine. She was abused as a child. She was told as a young woman that she was not suited for television, that she was too emotional, too heavy, too much. She was fired from her first television job as a reporter. The person who fired her said she was unfit for TV news. Unfit for TV news. Unfit for TV. Oprah Winfrey. Unfit for TV. She took that rejection and she turned it into the longest running daytime talk show in the history of American television. She built a media empire. She became the first black female billionaire. She has given away more than $500 million to educational causes. And every bit of it, every single bit, was built on a foundation of refusing to let someone else's opinion of her become her opinion of herself. But what I want you to understand about Oprah, and this is the part that matters more than the billions, is that she has spoken openly about the fact that for years, even as she was achieving all of this, she still struggled with the need for approval. She still sought validation. She still felt the ache of being not enough. Because success does not automatically heal the wound. Recognition does not automatically heal the wound. Awards and titles and accomplishments do not automatically heal the wound of feeling unvalued. Because the wound is not about what you have achieved. It is about what you believe at the deepest level about yourself, and that is the work. The real work, not the career work, not the relationship work, though those matter. The inner work, the slow and glamorous, sometimes terrifying work of excavating the beliefs that were planted in you by people who did not know any better, and replacing them with beliefs that are actually true. You are not the verdict of your worst days. You are not the summary of other people's opinions. You are not the gap between where you are and where you thought you would be by now. You are not your failures. You are not your unfinished dreams. You are not your trauma. You are not your disappointments. You are the person who survived all of that. And that person is extraordinary. Let me tell you about bamboo. In Asia, there is a species of bamboo that is planted as a seed. And for the first 4 years, 4 full years, almost nothing happens above the ground. The farmer waters it every day, tends to it, feeds it, and to anyone looking, it appears that nothing is happening. It appears that the effort is not working. It appears frankly like failure. And then in the 5th year, something happens. The bamboo grows, not slowly, not gradually. It grows 80 feet in 6 weeks. 80 feet. In 6 weeks. Where was that growth in the first 4 years? It was happening underground. The bamboo was building a root system so deep, so wide, so strong that when the time came, nothing could stop it from becoming what it was meant to be. Your seasons of feeling invisible, of being overlooked, of giving without receiving recognition, those are not wasted years. Those are not proof that you are not enough. Those are your underground years. You are building roots. You are developing depth. You are becoming someone whose foundation cannot be shaken, precisely because it was built in the silence, in the struggle, in the unseen places.